Hi, everybody. I just wanted to come on and say hi to you as you get ready to start your first pass on your novel or your short stories. This is the time in the class when the work shifts from being on my part to teach you and expose you to certain aspects of writing and shifts to you where you have to show me that you've learned what I taught you and that you can apply it to your own personal style. This is not an easy time in class, but this is the most fun time. I'm so excited about what you sent me in your outlines. I cannot wait to see where you go with your stories. Everyone has submitted some work that is truly, truly outstanding and has wonderful potential. So I'm very excited to see what happens. But I wanted to give you guys a little insight because, it sounds all beautiful and easy and simple until you get started. Writing is not an easy thing. A true writer, a true artist that feels it, in their soul, when they have writer's block, it's almost like a physical pain. I mean, I didn't write for years, about, oh my gosh, 6.5, 7 years. Because as a psychological horror author, it's a little difficult to write, for me at least, to write about, fear and murder and mayhem or whatever the case may be while I'm pregnant with a child or, handling an infant. So it was really difficult. So I stepped away from my passion and I could feel it. It was the worst. So you'll have moments of that while you're trying to complete an assignment, especially when you're on deadline. It's just so difficult if you somehow can't get your thoughts together. But I want to give you an idea of how random things can be, especially if you've been writing for a long time, or if you haven't written. This is one of your first forays into writing. It's important to understand that it's not always going to be as simple as you might think. Your ideas are not going to just flow. You're not going to sit down and 2 hours later you've completed everything you wanted to do. That's not always the way it works. So I have an excerpt of my novel that I've been working on forever, but there was a time in my life when a novel could take me 4 months, but now 10 years later, more responsibilities and such, it takes me a long time now. But I have an excerpt that I'm going to read you, but I'm going to read you the thing that woke me up one night, and you'll see just how strangely it morphed. So the thing that woke me up was, and here's the paper just so you can see I'm reading from it, is enjoy your break. Period. That's it. Enjoy your break. Those words were in my head in the middle of the night. And I woke up and I'm like, enjoy your break. What is that supposed to mean? And went back to sleep. Got up in the morning and I was able to write this. Enjoy your break. That's what he said. Enjoy your break. Such a normal comment, a throwaway, something you don't really mean, but you just say to be nice, just to have something to say. If he hadn't, I would have escaped the image of what he was to become. If he hadn't said it, maybe I would have just floated off to oblivion without knowing what happened to those I left behind. And then I went on to work. Came back that evening and said, gee, that was a really interesting paragraph. I wonder what I can do with it. So I sat down to write, and at first nothing came out. Really, for the first 2 days, nothing at all. So I read the paragraph again and focused on that last portion where I mentioned that if he hadn't said it, maybe I would have just floated off to oblivion. And that's what I focused on, floating off to oblivion. So what'll happen is you'll grab onto things that just seem like nebulous comments, nebulous statements, really disconnected things, and then you'll find the core. Remember, you're making all this up, so the core can be whatever you want it to be. The key is to find something that makes sense, expand upon it, research it, and make it into something that, really wasn't there before. So from enjoy your break, I now have floating off into oblivion. What do I do with it? I'm going to post this excerpt. It's chapter 3 of my novel, 2 weeks, whenever I finish this thing. Chapter 3 of the novel. I usually go with very short chapters, so you'll find that this is just a 2-page post. But I'll give you a little teaser here. From there, on the next page, I did add a couple of different things. Here's a little piece just to show you where I went. I screamed for him as much as I screamed for myself. It was only after hearing my own voice that I realized that I had continued to rise and move rapidly towards the higher ceiling of the lobby. I grabbed the doorframe and pulled myself outside, ducking through with barely enough time to clear the rest of my body. For the briefest of moments, I tried to force my feet down to the floor, tried to will myself to stand on the ground again, but there was no chance. It was as if I was on an invisible lift being raised up. My ascent was beyond my control. So I've gotten some traction on this now. As you can see, I've gotten, this is not the next paragraph. This is three paragraphs later. I won't tell you what happens to him. You'll find out on your own when you read it. Now, in the same chapter, I'm going to talk a little bit about using your personal experiences and personal thoughts. Things that frighten you, and I think we've covered this in our chapters, definitely, or in our lessons, definitely. Things that frighten you are bound to frighten someone else. A truly soulful peace intertwines personal fears and fictional situation. So in other words, don't be afraid to bare your own soul in your writing, because by doing so, it'll resonate with your readers, okay? So I'm a mom, right? I talked about my children, and that's why I couldn't write. Later on, you'll see here, and I'll just go through it. Windows broke and people rose through the blood. Okay, of course there's an error because this is the first draft. So I'll clean that up prior to putting it on. But windows broke and people rose through the bloody glass. Bloody glass, okay, forgive me. Glass protruding out of open wounds, head cuts open to reveal the smooth sheen of bone. Severed heads with their bodies feet away rose as well, with their bodies feet away. Rose as well, floating like a grotesque Macy's parade float. Babies cried. Perhaps that was the worst of it. For me, that is the worst of it. That sentence is very poignant. Everyone who's read this passage, I'll give it to samples, and I've talked to you about how you should let people read your work. Everyone that's read that is moved by that sentence. Likewise, your fears, your worries, your concerns about life, your thoughts about the situation, personal thoughts, not the author's thoughts. Those things can be added to your piece to give it a little more depth. For example, the air started to get cold, and I started to realize with unwanted clarity that I was going to die. If gravity kicked in now, the drop would crush me. If I didn't stop rising, I would freeze to death. If I somehow escaped that, I would not be able to breathe outside of Earth's atmosphere. Would a spaceship pick me up? Would I stop on a cloud and see my grandmother waiting there? Delirium had already begun to set in. Let your life spill out onto your page. That is how you reach your reader, because they're thinking the same things too. All right, as you start your writing, I want you to go ahead, clear your mind, get some coffee or tea or Pepsi or whatever it is that you use when you're writing. Put on your music, enjoy your space, and enjoy the process. I cannot wait to read your work.